Have you or anyone that you know ever been impacted by a traumatic brain injury, a TBI? A lot of times when we talk about this, we think about football players, but it's also just people in real life all the time suffer from what we call a traumatic brain injury. Today, I'm sitting down with Kelly Tuttle, a lady who is going to give us basically a masterclass in traumatic brain injuries. She knows it all too well because she's dealt with it herself. But what's amazing about her is, well, the knowledge that she brings to help you. So again, if you are somebody who has suffered your own traumatic brain injury or know somebody who has, today is a conversation that you don't want to miss. This is episode 393 of Grit, Grace, and Inspiration. I'm, of course, your host, Kevin Lowe. And my friend, I'm excited you're here. And I'm excited for us to dive into a really amazing conversation with a truly amazing woman. Here is my interview with Kelly Tuttle.
I got grit, grace, and inspiration on my mind. No matter the storms that rise, I won't be left behind. I'm stepping out in faith, cause I'm perfectly designed. I got grit, grace, and inspiration on my mind.
What's going on? And welcome back to Grit, Grace, and Inspiration. Today, I have the pleasure of being in the studio with none other than Kelly Tuttle. Kelly, welcome to the podcast.
Hello, Kevin, and thank you for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Oh man, I am so excited to for us to get to sit down together and hear about not only your story, but honestly, I guess just more so your wisdom that you have to share on this major topic of a traumatic brain injury. Before we get diving into your accident, your traumatic brain injury, I would love to kind of start things off to get to understand kind of where you were at in life before the accident. Like, what were you doing? What was life like for you? And we'll kind of start from there.
Okay. Before the crash, I was extremely active and busy person. I had a ton of energy. I annoyed people around me with my energy. And I was studying martial arts. I was training multiple nights a week, couple hours at a time. On Fridays, I was teaching a women's beginner Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu class. I was involved in my profession. I, in the past, was like the president of the Sacramento Nurse Practitioners Association, which is a branch off the California Association of Nurse Practitioners. Was really involved with that. I had a over-hour commute to work, would put in an 8-hour day, drive home and either do something for my profession or study martial arts or meet friends for dinner and then go home and enjoy a conversation with my family and go to sleep and do it all again. I was constantly on the go. Every weekend was booked with doing things with family and friends and travel. So yeah, that was me before.
Yes.
Now I'm a sloth.
So we went from a cheetah to a sloth if we're going to stick with animals. Okay. Yes. Oh my goodness. I love your sense of humor is the best. So if that was life before, what happened? Talk me through kind of the events that when your accident and kind of when was this, in terms of timeline in your life when this accident occurred and exactly what happened?
So I was driving home after work, was heading to my karate class because I was in intense training to test for my 3rd degree black belt. And on the way home, a driver pulled out in front of me and I T-boned the car. And so there was shattering glass everywhere, the crunch of thunderous metal, people coming out of their house to see what was going on. Ambulance was called. My car was smoking. And I thought, I can shake this off. I'll just shake this off. I'll be better in a couple weeks and I'll just go on with life. And I didn't go to the emergency room, which I should have. So anybody listening, go to the emergency room. Don't do as Kelly did. And I went back to work the next day, and my colleagues, who are registered nurses and nurse practitioners, were quick to identify that I wasn't speaking right, I wasn't acting right, and made me commit to seeing my general practitioner the next day. And I saw my general practitioner. I was diagnosed with a concussion and basically left feeling I'd be okay after 2 weeks, took a couple weeks off from work. After that, I tried to get back into life and really was pushing the martial arts training, going to work. I was dying of headaches, fatigue, irritability. I was grumpy, saying things that I normally wouldn't say, said the F word a lot. And then one day on my way home, I fell asleep at the wheel, Kevin.
Oh, no.
Yes. And I woke up as my car bounced off the road, just in time to slam the brakes before my car ran into a tree.
Oh, wow.
Yes. And so my concussed brain thought, well, what we'll do is we'll not tell the doctor. We'll just keep going on with life and just take a nap halfway in between home. I mean, in my car.
Totally
So
reasonable.
so bad. So bad. Do not support sleeping in your car on the side of the road. That was how my brain was working. And so then I went to lunch and met up with a colleague. And fortunately, she was a nurse practitioner and she worked in neurology at the time. I was a nurse practitioner working in cardiology at the time.
Okay.
And she was curious about my recovery because she knew I'd had a concussion. And so I mentioned, yeah, I fell asleep at the wheel the other day. And she's like, what? And I'm like, yeah. And so now I just take a nap in between work and home. And she's like, wait a minute. She's like, that is not right. And then she just rattled off all these things I needed to do. I hadn't had a brain scan. I hadn't been referred to a neurologist, and I hadn't seen a physical medicine and rehab doctor, a physiatrist. So I promised that I would do those things. And so I got a brain CT, and it was normal. There was nothing. I saw a neurologist, and honestly, the visit wasn't very helpful. But when I saw a physical medicine rehab doctor, now they take care of people with brain injuries and spine injuries. And so they're the person you want to see if you have a brain injury. And once I saw that doctor, she knew right away that I had diffuse axon injury. And that's what happens when the neurons, the brain cells in your brain, they have little connecting tendrils to each other. And when you have a concussion, those get severed.
Mm.
And when those are severed, then the cells die and that part of your brain stops working. And you have a lot of neural inflammation and cascade of biochemistry stuff going on. So after seeing her, she took me off work for 3 months, and I did speech therapy, physical therapy, neurophysical therapy, and I just started to get onto the right road of recovery. Because before that, I was on the wrong road.
Yeah.
Obviously, I fell asleep on it.
Yeah. Obviously. Yes. Wow. So, Kelly, I'm curious. So, going back to the accident itself, so did you not sustain any like physical injuries?
Oh yeah, I did. I had, typical. I had a bruise and swelling on my forehead from the release of the airbags. I had a contusion from the seatbelt and the airbags. I had a wrist injury. The airbags had ripped open my right wrist a little bit, and I had a huge swelling and burn rash. And then I had lower back, hip, and knee pain because I slammed on my brakes, and I was standing on my brake pretty much when the impact happened. But fortunately, I didn't break anything, just a lot of muscle and ligament strain.
Yeah. So, besides for the,
Oh, and
oh,
whiplash,
okay.
horrible whiplash.
Wow.
Yeah. hmm
Now, in terms of your head, though, it didn't hit anything besides for the airbag?
Correct. Correct.
Okay.
And so this is how it happens. The brain is not fixed in the skull. It floats a little bit. And so when the body or the head is moving along and is suddenly struck or stopped, so that's called acceleration deceleration. The brain inside your head actually slams into the front of your skull and then slams into the back of your skull and goes back and forth. And that's
Mm,
how the injury and the damage occurs.
okay. Wow. 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 Because I mean, the injury, I mean, the accident itself, I mean, you think of, I mean, it wasn't like you, I don't know, rolled the car. I mean, basically, you had quote unquote minor injuries, we could say, for a massive car accident. And yet, what has us talking today is about an injury that you didn't even realize you had until later on, which is kind of fascinating.
Exactly. And that is something that does happen to brain injury survivors. So, usually, when someone gets a concussion, they also will have another injury, like they will fall down the stairs and break their arm or their leg, or in a car accident like my own, they'll have really bad whiplash. Whiplash is a good, if you have whiplash, that's a good suggestion that you also have a concussion.
Mm,
And myself, I could attest to my biggest focus is getting my injuries healed and then my neck. And you really don't know the kind of the impact of the concussion is going to have on you until you really get back into life. And that could be, if you are a stay-at-home parent, being home alone with the children and managing getting to school on time, staying on top of appointments and things like that, or it could be the person who returns to work and you start using your brain where you have to fix things or pay attention during a chaotic environment that you're used to working in. And that's when the symptoms kind of really blow up and come into the picture, because people go back to work and they're like, I can't focus. I don't have motivation. I'm irritable. I'm snapping at people. I'm forgetting things. My speech is slurring. The lights are too bright. The sounds are too loud.
yeah. Now, what is the difference, I guess, between somebody having a concussion and somebody having a traumatic brain injury?
It's that they're interchangeable. A concussion is a brain injury.
Okay. Interesting. Interesting. Okay, then. I mean, we hear concussion all the time, but when you think of it in terms of traumatic brain injury, you kind of realize that it's the severity of a concussion.
Exactly. Exactly. And like some people will say, well, I have brain fog. Well, that's brain damage.
Mm,
Your
yeah.
brain's not working. It's been damaged. So there are some terms that we do use that kind of soften the blow of what has actually happened. Sometimes I'll use the term head injury because sometimes people aren't ready to hear that they have a brain injury.
Mm,
But the terms in clinical are interchangeable.
yeah. Now, how long after the accident did they finally diagnose you with having a traumatic brain injury?
I wasn't told I had a traumatic brain injury until I was 6 months out.
Wow.
And that's really bad. You shouldn't allow a patient to go out 6 months
No.
struggling without letting them know what's going on and setting them up for supportive strategies and care.
And I guess especially when I think of it is the fact that I mean, you were already in the medical field. I
Mhm.
mean, and the fact of is that something that's common for people to go undiagnosed for a long period of time, or is that more of a rare thing?
I would hope that it is rare, but I think it's more common than rare. And the reason why is there's a lot of misunderstanding about brain injury in the medical community and in the non-medical community, community that people who are not in healthcare. Even when I worked in cardiology, I was aware of strokes and traumatic brain injuries. But, when you think of that, you think of the severe cases, right? You don't think of the mild case, the mild traumatic brain injury that could be just as impactful on somebody's life as a severe brain injury.
Mm.
And then the other thing too that I learned, which was interesting, is that there's a new specialty in medicine that is brain injury, let's say, or I should say it's concussion medicine, it's brain injury medicine. And these are physical medicine and rehab doctors that are doing extra training to specialize in concussion and traumatic brain injury. And this is like less than 5 years that this has been kind of going on. So it is unfortunate that a lot of people who do have concussions or traumatic brain injuries will not be diagnosed because there just isn't that knowledge out there on the front lines of healthcare. And so, unfortunately, you may run into a provider that says, "Oh, you should be better in 2 weeks," and you're not, and they say, "Well, that's not really your concussion; that's your anxiety," or,
Mm.
"Well, it's been 2 years; you're not going to get any better.
Mm.
This is what you have to get used to." And all that stuff's not true.
Mm.
But unless you're lucky and you run into someone like me who's like passionate about brain injuries, you're not going to get the right information.
Mm. Yeah, absolutely. So when you finally got the diagnosis, how did things change for you at that point in terms of maybe treatment or just life in general? What happened at that point?
Well, I realized that I wasn't crazy. I thought I was
Yes.
going crazy. I was like,
Yes.
I would be doing my martial arts and I would like tell my foot to move forward and it would step back. I was irritable and I was talking over people in conversation and argumentative and pushing my point, which I never normally wouldn't do. I lost my self of inner peace.
Mm.
And so once I figured out it was because I had a brain injury, I was like, oh, okay. Yeah, I'm not nuts. It's because my brain is broken. And so then my communication with the people around me changed. It's like whenever I got grumpy or snapped or whatever, I would be able to say, "Oh, I'm sorry. That was my brain talking, not me. Uh, can I just have a moment to, focus on whatever I was trying to do?" Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
So it makes a big difference.
Yeah. So what did you end up doing as far as treatment to try to help this? And I guess in with that question is what kind of treatments are available for people?
If you're having cognitive symptoms or speech symptoms, like you're having difficulty with planning, with focusing, learning, reading, or finding your words, you need a referral to a speech therapist.
Mm.
If you have any other injuries, such as whiplash, you need a referral to physical therapy because if your whiplash isn't taken care of, it's going to be difficult to control your headaches, your post concussive headaches, and you're going to feel off balance, and that could put you at risk for another fall. The other thing is to have your eyes checked. So start off with an optometrist. They just to see if your prescription has changed, and that's just the issue because you can have blurry vision, you can have double vision, you can have issues with difficulty reading. And if your optometry visit is you're told your eyes are fine then and you're having double vision or eye pain or anything like that, you need to see an ophthalmologist and you do need a referral to see an ophthalmologist. And then if you're still struggling, you're feeling off balance, you're having difficulty with light sensitivity, difficulty with reading, you're not able to read off the laptop as long as you used to before your head injury, then consider seeing a behavioral optometrist and they can look and see how your eyes are functioning together and how they're communicating with your brain. Those are some of the things that I think of off the top of my head. Now, things that you can do independently are start journaling. I'm a big proponent of journaling because it'll help you figure out what your symptoms are and what makes them better and what makes them worse, so you can limit the things that make them worse. So say you have sound sensitivity, you can use noise counseling, earbuds or headphones to help you concentrate and focus better at work. And then I also recommend an anti-inflammatory nutrition and exercise. You don't want to seclude yourself in a dark room. You can do that for the first 48 hours, but after that, you should start getting out, moving around, because the more you exercise, the better the brain is able to clear out the dead cells and start rebuilding new connective highways in your brain.
Mm,
And then I also recommend practicing mindfulness. After a head injury, a lot of people get stuck in their heads and they're alone in their heads with ruminating thoughts and negative thoughts and feelings of failure and worthlessness, loneliness. And mindfulness will help you get out of your head and into the present moment. And that helps with the healing too.
okay. Now, in terms of things like what you described of like being at karate training and like you try to kick your foot forward and it goes backwards, or you spontaneously busting out with the F word, like what helps with that kind of stuff?
So, exercise will help the brain and the body reconnect over time.
Okay.
So, definitely moving is, and the moving could just be walking.
Okay.
Simply just going out for a walk, walking, trying to get a little walk every day, and then slowly increasing your exercise as you tolerate it. Because some people, after a head injury, and I did have this, will have exercise intolerance. Before my car accident, I was able to train a couple hours with no problem. And then after my crash, I could only do like a kata for 2 minutes, and then I was short of breath and had a pounding headache.
Mm,
And so you just have to, depending on where you're at, like some people, they don't have that exercise intolerance. So they can go right back to what they were physically doing before their head injury. And then some people are unable to do that. And if you're unable to do that, then you're going to have to increase it slowly. You may have to work with a physical therapist to figure that out, or your general practitioner, or your brain injury specialist.
okay. Okay. One other question. When you speak about the journaling, do you encourage just journaling in general or specifically focusing on being sure that you're journaling about like how you felt that day, what, impacted you, what went well, what didn't go well?
Exactly. So I usually recommend starting out with the date and then writing how well you slept. Sleep's really important for the brain to heal. A lot of people think that the brain isn't doing anything when you sleep, but that's actually when it really goes to work, cleaning
Mm,
house, downloading memories, softening stressful information that came in that day. So it helps with emotional control and mood modulation. That's when the lymphatic kind of part of the brain opens up and really just flushes out the brain and cleans out toxins and radicals and things like that. So sleep's really important. So I recommend journaling. How well did you sleep last night? And if you didn't sleep well, why you didn't sleep well, and changes you can make to improve your sleep, or is it time to talk to your doctor about getting help with your sleep? And then kind of writing down how you're feeling. So, did you wake up with a headache or dizziness? Did you wake up tired? Do you feel like today's going to be a good brain day or a bad brain day? And then putting down like a list of 1 to 3 things you want to accomplish during the day, and then at the end of the day journaling and just saying like, well, how'd the day go? Did you have a bad conversation with someone at work? Did someone make you mad? And then what led up to that? And then reflecting on, well, if this happens again, what tools or strategies that I got from my speech therapist or my counselor or my psychologist that I can use to help cope with that in the future and have a better outcome.
Hmm. Very, very interesting. The journaling is something I never would have thought of, and yet it makes sense on so many levels of not only having this thing to track, but also I would imagine just the process of writing is another way of just working the brain.
Exactly. So yes, there is research that supports that the act of writing is something that helps prevent dementia, and it really reconnects the brain and stimulates creativity and things like that. So the writing of the journal is very important. And, sometimes you'll have loss of coordination, and that will help, find coordination after a brain injury. And that would really help with that.
Yeah. Now, obviously, I'm sure this is very dependent upon each person's situation, but asking you personally with your own situation and then others that you've seen, like how long can people expect recovery to take?
So yeah, like you said, it's different with everyone. Not everyone has the same symptoms. And what we often say is once in healthcare, once you see one traumatic brain injury, you've seen one traumatic brain injury. So everyone is different, but normally I will tell my patients, well, you should get better, in a couple months, but some people don't see recovery for 6 months to 2 years. But even after the 2 year point, there is still improvement in function. It's just really subtle, and the improvements are really far apart. Whereas the healing is really accelerated in that 2 year period, but it still continues after the 2 year period. So I like to remind my patients not to lose hope after that 2 year anniversary. And we're starting to learn more about this as more research comes out about neuroplasticity. And that isn't out there on the front line, but it's slowly trickling into clinical practice. And neuroplasticity is that if you continue to try to get back to your baseline, your brain won't be the same, but and the injured parts of cells will die. They won't come back, but your brain will want to reconnect and go around those spaces. And
Interesting.
the more you take care of your brain, support your brain health, do the things you love and enjoy, the brain will reconnect. Now it won't be the same, but it will be better.
Hmm. Yeah. Wow. What about for you personally? What was that recovery journey like for you? How long would you say that it took for you to really start noticing some differences?
When I started noticing, that's the other thing about the journal is you can look back and see how far you've come. And I don't know exactly when it was, but I went back to kind of read my journal. But right after my car accident, I couldn't make coffee and toast at the same time for breakfast because I would start the toast and then forget it was there. And then I would make my coffee and then I would sit on my couch and go, why am I hungry? And, or I would remember my toast and forget my coffee. I would leave the coffee cup somewhere in the house and I couldn't find it. And my husband's like, why is there all this dried bread in the toaster and coffee mugs? I was back at work full time probably 6 months after the car accident. So, yeah, I went from not being able to make toast and coffee to being able to return to work within the 6 months. Now, it wasn't perfect because the first 2 years that I went back to work, all I did was sleep. If I wasn't at work, I was sleeping. So I would go to work, I would come home, I would take a 2 hour nap, I would get up for an hour and eat, get ready for work the next day, and then go back to sleep. And then on the weekends, I slept 12 to 14 hours and sometimes taking a 2-hour nap in between that, just so I could go back to work on Monday. And that's how I spent my first 2 years.
Wow.
Yeah. And then my third year, I was able to start walking and exercising on the weekends. So that was huge,
Yes.
the big improvement. And then my fourth year, I was able to start hiking, going on hikes and stuff like that, and kind of doing some traveling, short travel out of town. And then by my fifth year, I started writing my book. And I think writing my book was really helpful in my recovery because I had to learn so much. I wasn't a writer, I was a nurse practitioner. I was in healthcare. And we don't write, we chart, and it's really bad. Uh, it's really bad. It's not good reading. Uh, so I had to learn a lot about writing and marketing and technology and sharing documents on Google and all that stuff. And I've continued to do so since. And I feel like that has really helped with my healing and the way I function. My speaking's better, but every once in a while you'll hear me slur my words or I'll lose my train of thought or I can't find my word. And I'm not back to my martial arts training because I don't have the energy for that. But I'm back to starting to exercise. So it has been a long journey, and I'm just going to keep working at it and improving it, and enjoying life as best as I can with the things that I have.
Yeah, absolutely. I think something that I want to definitely draw attention to is the fact that I'm going to assume most times it's a slow process. We live in a world where we want everything as soon as possible. We live in a world where we think everything is fixable. We just need a pill to take and it will fix it.
Right.
But when you just spoke, you weren't talking about days or weeks or months. We just heard you talk about increments of years. And I can't help but think we have to draw focus to that, is the fact of it is a slow, ongoing process.
Yes, it's a journey. It's a new journey. It's a new chapter in your life. A lot of brain injury survivors, they feel like that they died the day of their brain injury
Mm,
and that they are somebody new. And it is a process. And with that there's a grieving process, right? Because you lost some health advantage you had before, whether it was your energy or your focus or your vision. And you really do have to go through that grieving process, and you're going to need your family, your friends, the support of probably talk therapy, psychologist, a psychiatrist, like if you're having difficulty with your mood management or your sleep, a psychiatrist is the best person to go to if you're failing the first line or typical treatments for those issues. And so it is a process. And I do talk about it in my book. I call it letting go. And what one day, for some strange reason, I wanted to go outside and journal. And in my journal, I drew a line down the middle of the paper. And on the left side, I put all the things I lost, like, or that were important to me before that car accident. And then I created a list of all the things I gained from my brain injury. And so some of those things were like a more slower pace, more mindful, present lifestyle, more compassion and understanding for others around me, just enjoying and embracing a simple life. And then when I looked at the list of who I was before, I was like, that some of these things are not important to me anymore. And some of these were not healthy either. And so when I compared the two lists, I was like, you know what? I really like who I've become after this brain
mm.
injury. I think this is a better person than I am. And I think that I'm going to live a more fulfilled life.
Yeah, absolutely. A question that I just thought of when you were going through that is Coming from my perspective of when I went blind, I grew up riding dirt bikes,
Oh,
and
yeah, fun.
yes, I mean that was my life, and so I have had to grieve the loss of that, and I wonder if you had to deal with that with martial arts.
Yes, yes. I mean, I lived, ate, and breathed martial arts before my car accident, and that loss was significant. And the thing, too, that you and I both lost, I wanted to point this out to your listeners, is when you dirt bike or when you do martial arts or you play tennis or ski, you are in the moment. And that's called mindfulness. You are focused on what your body feels, how the turn of the dirt road feels, the bump, the jump, those kinds of things. You're not worried about other stuff. You're not
Yes.
you're not listening to the negative thoughts in your brain or you're worried about what's going on at work. You're just there in the moment. And when you lose that, not only do you lose that hobby, that love, that passion, but you lose that practice of mindfulness and being in the moment. And when you're recovering from whatever it could be an injury or an illness, you have to find a way to get that practice back because mindfulness and getting out of your head is so important to your recovery. And so I lost that. And I was talking about that loss with a counselor. And she said, yeah, you've lost your mindfulness practice because I was talking about the loss of sense of peace inside of me.
Mm.
And she recommended adult coloring. And I was like, what? Wow, this is cool. So I went and I started doing adult coloring and I was able to practice to relearn how to be in the moment, that mindfulness, that sense of getting out of my head, not listening to the negative swirling of thoughts and voices, and getting more in touch of the present moment where I was, gratitude for the things I had. So if you lose your hobby, your passion, or whatever it was, whether it's dirt biking or martial arts, when you're in your recovery, you're going to need to find a way to practice that, even though you can't physically do your hobby or your practice.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that. And I don't know that I've ever even really thought of it in that way before, but it makes total sense. And I completely agree. Now, that kind of ties in with a question I wanted to ask you is what was the kind of like the short term and the long term like impact on your relationships, on friendships, with your career? What, how would you kind of summarize that?
That is a really good thing to bring up, Kevin. Yeah. So, unfortunately, brain injury survivors do lose friends.
Yes.
And because you can't keep up. So I lost a lot of my martial arts training partners. I have a handful still in my life and I treasure them. And my kids lost out on play dates because I didn't have the energy to socialize and to take them to their martial arts training or to any parties or get-togethers. I missed out on my children growing up that first 2 years because I slept all the time. And my husband had to quit his job because he had to take over the childcare and the house stuff just so I could, cobble myself together to get to work every day to pay for the roof over our head. And I was the carrier of our health care benefits. So and even now, this day, I can't network with people at work. Like if they want to meet after work, like say for drinks, I can't go because I'm exhausted at the end of the day. I need to go home and rest up and get to bed on time. So there is a lot of that loss, but the people that stay in your life through all that, they're like the best. They're the ones you can call at 3 in the morning to get you bailed out of jail.
Yep.
So,
Yep. Yes.
so there is
Yes.
that, yeah, there is that loss and it's hard. It's really hard.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm so glad, honestly, that you brought up that whole topic of family dynamics, because I've always said with what happened to me, that I say what happened to me didn't just happen to me, it happened to a family.
Hmm.
And when I listen to you just talk, I say it's the same thing for her. Same thing is what happened to you, it happened to a family. And you guys though have gotten through it together.
Yes, yes. And I think, I have a really great husband, and it was really, yeah, I don't know if this, I should say fortunate, but it was fortunate that this happened, really late into our marriage. We've been married now 30 years. And so we had a lot of practice with communication and, working as a team before this happened. And, some people, when this happens, they lose their marriage because of the personality changes. Maybe they have angry outbursts. They can, become violent. You can lose your job because you get irritable and you say the wrong thing. So, yeah, it can be really devastating. Some brain injury survivors will treat their symptoms with alcohol and drugs. And there's a huge traumatic brain injury population in concert in people who are in prison.
Wow.
Yeah. And so it is very, very impactful. And, like I said before, it's very impactful for those who have severe brain injuries, but it can be super impactful also for those who have just a mild traumatic brain injury. So none of that stuff should be ignored. It should be monitored. Normally, when I have a patient has a new concussion, I follow up with them within a couple weeks, and then a month, and then every 3 months, and every 6 months, and then every year after that, depending on how impacted they were by their concussion.
Yeah. I want to get to your book, but before we do, I hadn't planned on asking you this question, but just the direction of our conversation, I wanted to bring it up is, and I don't even know if this is true. So obviously I'm going to turn to you to tell me, is I have heard that people with traumatic brain injury, they're at greater risk of suicide. Is that correct?
Yes, yes, very much so. You're at higher risk if you have a history of mental health illness before the injury. But the injury can also cause mental health issues because the brain isn't functioning the way it's supposed to. So the injury can also affect the way your brain manages your hormones and the distribution of the chemicals such as serotonin and things like that in the brain. And so that's why it increases your risk of developing anxiety or depression. And then throw on top of that, say, loss of friends, loss of work, loss of ability, loss of a marriage, starting to drink, starting to do drugs. It could be this really negative spiral. And so it's very important to identify somebody who has a brain injury and to monitor them. Their general practitioner should be monitoring, just like someone who has high blood pressure or who's had a stroke. You don't know how things are going to play out. And the person doesn't know how it's going to play out. They shouldn't be out there on their own figuring this out because they don't have a brain that works right, right? So they don't think right, like me. Oh, let's sleep at the side of the road, you know?
Yes.
And if I had a doctor that called me and said, hey, what's going on? That would have been picked up a lot sooner
Yes.
than later.
Yes.
That, if she had followed up with me and said, hey, how are you doing? You back at work? How's it going? And if I had said, well, I'm really irritable and the lights are bothering me and I'm getting tired at the wheel, then I could have been prevented from falling asleep at the wheel. I mean, I could have killed myself
Yeah,
on accident.
exactly. Of course. Now, for somebody listening who's maybe a family member or a friend of somebody who they know who is suffering from a traumatic brain injury, is there any type of signs, signals, anything that they should look out for with their friend, their family member, of signs that maybe they need to try to get them help?
Yeah. So if they're if they're irritable, if their personality has changed, if they're not sleeping right, having insomnia, or they're waking up in the middle of the night, if they're not doing well at work or not in school, are they having issues with coordination? Do you see them kind of walk into walls or doorways? I mean, all there's a lot of symptoms that if you watch for them, you can pick them up. But the other thing too is that, the person with the brain injury may not want people to know what's going on. And so they're not just asking, "Hey, how are you doing?" isn't going to suss out if there's an issue. You have to just kind of watch their behavior and how they act and things like that to kind of pick that up. But what would be really helpful is just becoming aware of the multiple symptoms of brain injury and just to kind of watch for those symptoms and to ask about those symptoms.
Okay. Okay. Wonderful. Wonderful. My hope already in our conversation today is that somebody listening today is either getting immense value or they know somebody who they are already ready to share this episode with, because I can't help but think that what you're sharing today is something that anybody needs to hear who knows somebody who's suffering. Because I mean, this is all such amazing, amazing information that you're sharing. So I just right away want to thank you so much for it.
Oh, it's my pleasure, Kevin, because I don't want what happened to me to happen to others. I don't want people to feel like that they're alone, and I want them to know there is hope.
Yes, yes, absolutely. Well, speaking of that, I guess, is what prompted you? Here you are, we've learned, I mean, you're a career woman, you're a wife, you're a mother, suffered a traumatic brain injury, and then you decide, you know what? I think I'm going to write a book. Like, um,
Well, I did have some of my friends encourage me to do so, but why I wanted to write my book was because the 2 weeks that I was supposed to return to work after my time off for 3 months, I was freaking out. I didn't know how I was going to go back to work. I didn't know what my brain needed to support its performance at work. And I scoured tons of books and online sources, and I was super anxious, and I didn't want anybody else to go through that. So when I decided to write a book, I didn't want to write a book just about brain injury or my story. I wanted it to help people get quickly in one spot the tools and strategies they would need to help them go back to work and to go back to school and to get back into life. So it was really important that my book was quick, to the point, with strategies that can be implemented right away for the brain injury survivor. And after my brain injury, I also was an avid reader before. And then after, I could hardly read for 5 minutes without getting a headache, or even I couldn't even remember what I read. And so it was important for my book to be on Audible so that people could listen to it and not have to read it too. So
oh, wow.
those were two important things. It had to be quick to the point for strategies that can be implemented, and it needed to be on Audible.
Amazing. And remind me, the name of your book is After the Crash?
Yes. After the crash, how to keep your job, stay in school, and live life after a brain injury.
Amazing. And so that is available for anybody to do on Audible. And if they wanted a regular copy, where could they go?
Any store, any indie store. You can also get it off my website at kellytuttle.org. And yeah, it's at Amazon. You could get it in ebook form too off of Amazon if you like to read stuff off your tablets.
Okay. Amazing. Amazing. Well, Kelly, I guess I would love just to end with asking you, for the person who's listening today, who maybe they're in the thick of it, maybe they're struggling, whether or not it's even related to something like a traumatic brain injury, it's some other type of medical situation, it's something that just has them in the thick of it. And maybe they're at that point where they're just frustrated. They want to feel better. They want their life back. They want things to be good again. Do you have any kind of last kind of message of hope to give them to keep them going?
I would definitely recommend not looking forward. So the journaling, like I said, I'm a big proponent. Your journal's great. It won't care how many times you cuss at it. It doesn't talk back. You can write anything in it. But the nice thing is when you're having those days where you're losing hope, you're frustrated, you're angry with your progress of your healing, you can look back on day one and see how far you've come. And that will help sustain you.
I love it. I love it. Kelly, you are an amazing woman. Your story is incredible.
Thank you.
And just the insights that you shared today, I truly hope it reaches the right person at the right time, because I believe full-heartedly that the conversation today can change somebody's life. And I am honored to have had you on the podcast to share all of that with the person listening.
Well, thank you, Kevin, for having me on. I'm honored to be on your podcast. I really love the work you've been doing. It's fantastic. Thank you for letting me share my story with your listeners.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, thank you. And for you listening today, please be sure that you check out today's show notes. I will leave links to all of the information that Kelly just shared with us so that you can get a copy of her book, whether on Audible or one of those old school books where you actually pick it up and read it in the hand. So whatever your style, links are in the show notes. The most important thing that I want you to do right now is, if there is somebody you know in your life, in your world, who you know that they themselves or somebody they know is going through something, whether a traumatic brain injury or just some type of medical issue, go ahead and share today's episode with them. That would mean the world to me. I know it would mean the world to them. And I feel like that's the best thing that any of us can do, is just to show somebody we care enough by sharing something with them that we think can help. So with that said, my friend, I'm of course your host, Kevin Lowe, and this was another episode of Grit, Grace, and Inspiration. I hope you enjoyed today's episode, and I look forward to seeing you next time.
I will not fear the storm, my hope's well defined. I walk by faith, not by sight. I won't be resigned, rising higher every day. Oh, doubts left behind, 'cause I got grit, grace, and inspiration on my mind.